This is the Son of the Law podcast. Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to the Son of the Law podcast. I'm your host, Jay Christopher. And before we get started here, just a quick reminder. If you're enjoying the show, please make sure to follow us on social media, your favorite podcast player, and YouTube. And when I say, I don't know, as I've done this a little bit now, I'm realizing how stoic that sounds. And so when I ask you to follow, please open your podcast player, find the little follow button, and click it. And if this is the first time you're listening to the show, go ahead and click it. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to be glad you did. Looking forward to spending more time together. Don't forget to drop comments and share this show with your friends. Your support, particularly at this time, really helps us grow. And those 5-star reviews, they mean everything. Joining me today is John Wier. So welcome to my home, John.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And good morning.
Good morning to you.
It is just after 6 a.m. And I want to set the scene for everyone, right?
Correct.
Friday morning, house is really quiet. My family's sleeping. We got a hot cup of coffee here. And, you know, I want to invite the third chair here into this mentor-mentee chat. John and I have spent many Friday mornings like this, haven't we?
Yes, sir. We have. Yeah.
So we historically have, for the last few years, I don't want to say 5, it hasn't been 5, but it's probably been 3 to 4. We've gotten together on Friday mornings, group of guys, to study and talk, spend some time together. And throughout that time, and you know, over this long relationship I've had with you, John, we've gotten to know one another pretty well.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness. Yes.
And I've shared with you a lot of things that have gone on with my life, and just so thankful to have you. And you know, you've been an inspiration to me. You kind of look at those guys, you think, okay, hey, 20 years, where do you think I want to be? Well, let me ask John. Let's see where I might think I might try to work or move. And you've always just been a really great counsel for me. I want to introduce you now. As I've already talked through you being a personal mentor of mine. You've supported my family in so many ways. I'm trying to think back when the kids were in like VBS and stuff, you were running around with our littles, you and Becky.
Yes, I was. Yes.
Yeah. And as those kids are now, you know, in college and seniors and juniors and 8th grade, you know, you've seen them grow up just like we have in some ways. And
Correct.
You've been in part of their life as well.
Yeah. Started seeing your kids when they were 4 years old.
Yeah.
And taking them around Bible school and getting acquainted. Of course, we've known your little wife forever, it seems like.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I've known you for, well, you say 4 years old for Mariana. She's going to be 21 here in a month or so, right? So 16 years or so. 17 years. My goodness. And Carissa, she spent some time with you at your house when she was in high school.
Yeah, she came to our house on New Year's most of the time. And I think that's the time she spent there. We'd have kids over for New Year's just to give them a safe place to go, and their moms and dads would know that they're safe there. We had a great time with them.
She still talks about it.
I think that's where she learned to play pitch, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and she reminds me that she's a pitch champion whenever we play. So, you know, just as a way of trying to help folks get to know, you know, our guests on the show, I try to describe you. And I had a hard time with it, I'll be honest, because I feel like I know you really well, but I feel like I know you maybe in a different way than others know you. And this is a compliment, not a criticism, or you just make me feel that way. Sometimes the people who are genuinely interested in you and genuinely interested in people, they make everyone feel that way. And if everybody feels the way that you make me feel, then you're doing something right.
Well, thank you.
So I call that introspective and reflective because I don't know. It was just words that sounded smart, I think. But I think generally you're just an all around good dude. So anyway, thanks for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe how you were born and raised, how people might know you in the community. Now we're going to get into some details related to how you were born and raised, so you don't have to go too deep there, but just help people in the community of Lawson get to know you and the listening audience.
Sure. I was raised in Hale, Missouri. That's over by Chillicothe. Most people know where Chillicothe and Carrollton are.
Yep.
Hale's a little town of 500 in the middle of great hunting area, fishing area. We're 3 miles from the river.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time growing up there. Privileged to, from the age of 3, to grow up on a farm and have good neighbors that I could go on their property anytime. And for 12 years probably, we lived on this farm, and it just spurred me to the outdoors. I'd be up before everybody in the house, off in the woods, be back in time to milk cows, things like that. Yeah, it was a great life. I was reflecting on that the other day and writing down some just little notes, and I can remember my first memory was waking up, living in town.
Yeah.
At 3. I was 3 years old, and Miss Downing, our neighbor, that was my mom's best friend, picked me up out of the bed and said, "You're going to be moving to a farm." And
Oh, wow.
that just struck me when I wrote it down. I was surprised I remembered something like that. And I didn't even know what a farm was, but looking back, I think we reflect better looking back. It was the best time of my life, one of my best times.
So you're reflecting on a time when you were 3, and a gentleman never asks a lady your age, but he never says that about asking a dude how old he is. How old are you?
76.
76. So you've got a 73-year memory in there. Your life was upended. You moved from the city out to the country, and never the same.
Never the same.
It's incredible. What's something people wouldn't know about you, or maybe that they'd be just surprised to discover about you?
I was in the Air Force for 4 years, and I served in the Secret Service. I was an electronic guy.
Mm-hmm.
Gathered data from Russian ICBMs, short range nuclear missiles. Yeah. So I worked for NSA for 3.5 years before I moved back to the Midwest. The East Coast was just too crowded. My wife and I could have stayed in the military. I loved the military. It was great. You knew all the rules. You knew how to work, who you could talk to
Right.
truthfully and who you couldn't talk to truthfully.
Mm-hmm.
And but when I told her their offer for us to stay in the military, which was a good offer, we were going to have to be overseas for 6 years. And she said, I think we need to raise our family around our grandparents. So we moved back to Missouri to start with.
Well, that'll do it. That's an interesting one. And I didn't know actually about that decision. So 6-year tour with the NSA in a foreign country. Boy, that's the type of stuff I don't want to call it legend, but the NSA has come a long way. And you start talking about how you might work for the NSA today, and I think people might have a different reaction to that.
I think you're right.
So other things about you that I think make you notable here for the listening audience and those in the Lawson community, maybe surrounding area. You have been on the school board since God knows how long.
Over 30 years.
which is, I mean, it's an incredible run. I think that's an evidence and testament to your love for this community, the kids here, you know, your contributions to the school and your investment of your time, logic, intellect. So good. The father of Chris Wier, whom we had on our show under our Coke Please episode. You were reflected on in that show fondly. And Chris mentioned that he now works in a office just across the street from where you worked.
That's
here
true.
In
That's
Lawson.
true.
Yeah. So you had a long and storied career with the post office. Yes?
Yes. 43 years.
43 years in the post office. And then how many years in the military?
4 years, 6 months.
4 years and 6 months. Okay, so you're pushing 50 years of your 76-year life working,
Right.
doing the work.
Yeah, but work is what we're made to do it in.
I think so. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think you have to understand that growing up, I started working at 12. I mentioned Hale, small town, 500 people. The guy that owned one of the grocery stores in town, I think he saw something in me because working on a farm, you're up every day, you're doing something. And he saw something in me and said, "Hey, would you ask my dad first? I'd like to have your son come down a couple hours after school every day." My dad was a rural mail carrier, which is interesting that I got into the post office.
It is.
He said I was absolutely crazy for taking this job. But there's a story behind that, and I've told you that story, and it's way too long for your podcast, probably.
I don't know, maybe another episode.
Yeah, maybe so. And anyway, I went to work at 12 after school. I'd work 2 hours. And yeah, so that's where I started. And I loved being there. I was around all the people in town. They'd come in, buy their groceries and stuff. I'd carry all the groceries out for the elderly ladies and men in town. And sometimes I deliver stuff, If it was with 2 or 3 blocks away from the office, I'd just go in there. And I said, well, I'll just take that over to Sadie's house because she'd call it in on the phone,
Yep.
Whatever.
Yeah, and life looked a little differently then, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, making $1 an hour, that was big time.
Exactly. And I was trying to find a time to work this in. I don't know if this is the right time or not, but for those listening, ask yourself how often you have the opportunity to talk to somebody about their life and how things used to be. In our episode with Becky Harold, we talked about how World War II is becoming a war of antiquity. And the definition of antiquity is the people who have a firsthand account of it are no longer around to share the reality that it was for them.
That's true.
And, many things in the community of Lawson are rapidly becoming antiquity. I don't know. What am I trying to say? They're rapidly becoming history that nobody's lived firsthand.
Right.
And so I'm really looking forward to talking with you today for a couple things, right? To share a lot of things that you have, knowledge that you have with us, but also to maybe set an example for our listeners to go talk to others in their lives around how it used to be and try to understand how things have changed and the values and benefits around that. And then some of the things that don't look so good. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this. Before we get there, lighthearted stories, rants, upbeat, rapid fire questions. Do you eat peanut butter and jelly?
I do.
How do you do it? You go old school? And I say old school, like, let's see, 76 years old. You were born in the 50s?
Correct.
How did they do PB&J in the 50s versus how do you do it now?
Didn't have extra crunchy then, so yeah. That I remember anyway. It came along in there before I got out of high school. They started having extra crunchy. Actually, I eat peanut butter and jelly. Strangely, I got that from my wife. You put butter on the bread first, real butter.
Oh.
And then on the other side, you put the peanut butter, and then you put the jam in between it. And I'm a big jelly eater. I love fresh jelly made from stuff that you grow or pick.
Okay.
Because we did that when we were kids. We'd go pick blackberry, and Mom would make blackberry jelly, or grapes from the arbor at my grandma's house, and she'd make. So toast and jelly is one of the things that I have at my house still today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, when you make jelly, and there's many people who don't know, and I'm going to maybe reveal my ignorance as well. Do you put pectin in it? Like,
yes. Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah. Well, you have to make it gel real good.
Yeah. My home ec teacher in 1996 shared that with me, and I can't believe the name just came back that quickly.
There you go. And lots of sugar.
Yeah, lots of sugar.
If you think you get a lot of sugar in a Coke, why, if you'd make jelly, you would see real quick that it's loaded.
Yeah.
It's loaded, man.
Oh, that's great. Hot takes. What's something that irritates you about kids?
Irritates me. When they don't behave. Yeah, especially around their parents. And I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
And your kids act up, and it just burns you to have them do that, because your kids are a reflection of you. And you have that talk afterwards. It's like, you were impolite to Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so because you kept interrupting, or you kept trying to tell your story when we were talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while for them to get there to understand that they're annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you say quiet down, that's what you really mean.
Right. And that's not, it's irritating, right? But that's not unloving for you to say.
No,
For you
it
to
is
say
not
that, right?
unloving.
That's stern correction and a stiff rod of discipline, right? Helps a kid kind of stay the course.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still there.
Yeah.
We've talked about this subject before, how you discipline kids, and sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
But you just have to let them know that you love them, and it's not a situation of where you're aggravated at them to where they're going to be in trouble with you or something like that.
Yeah. Love you enough to talk to you about this.
Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah. That's brilliant. All right. What's a true stereotype of getting old?
Gosh. I've never thought of myself as old.
I know.
My wife and I talk about this, Becky and I talk about this a lot,
Say young at heart. You're young at heart.
Yeah, young at heart. There's another stereotype word that has come over the years.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how to answer that. I think you just enjoy life.
Yeah.
If you've been around.
The stereotype is that old people enjoy life more.
Sometimes.
And you've leaned into that.
I've leaned into enjoying what God's given me.
Yeah.
It's just like you didn't tell your guests this, but you and I meet at 5:30.
Yeah.
On Friday morning. So I'm up at 5:00 and getting ready, and got the hot coffee ready and out the door, and I'm thinking, hey, I want to get there at 5:30 so Chris and I can talk about life.
Yeah.
And that's what really brings you to being friends, because as you do that day every Friday,
Yeah.
like we have, like you said, for 4 years, you make a bond that most people don't have.
Yeah.
And that's what's called close friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you count on your fingers and your toes, how many really close friends you've had in life.
It's not many. You probably don't need both hands and toes.
That's right. It's sharing life that nobody else gets to hear about.
Yeah.
And not talking about it later to the dude at church or at the ball game, that Chris Bolin, or,
Yeah.
say something that's off color, No, you don't do that.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I love your answer, by the way. I'll share with you another perspective. I asked another mentor friend of mine the same question, and he said, "You just never miss a chance to pee."
I've heard that at my house on Sunday evenings with my group. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, don't wait. If you gotta go, go.
Go. That's true.
All right. What's something that used to be normal but now is not normal? And I have a guess, but I'll ask you about it after you tell me your answer.
Okay. Disciplining kids on the spot rather than waiting.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that doesn't embarrass them in front of maybe their friends or another adult.
Yeah, that's an art, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Having those, what I call clue words, letting
Yep.
your kids know prior to
Yep.
those situations of, if I say something like, I need you to stop right now and be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
If you say it in that tone, they know, because you've already discussed it with them,
Yeah.
that what they're doing is inappropriate and they better stop now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fantastic and very diplomatic way of talking through it, right? Because it means that you've got a relationship with them.
Right.
Yeah. And with my kids, it's a look,
Okay.
you know, and Mariana will tell you that I have a vein in my head, and the kids have named it. They call it Dale. And they're like, when Dale comes out, you know, it's the problem. So get fired up like that. Do you break for brunettes, blondes, and Corvettes?
I only break for my wife.
What about redheads? You're like, what is this question?
Yeah, very few redheads in my life.
What's the Confederate Railroad song? Right, you've heard that? Break for brunettes. I love it. I couldn't resist. I wanted to see how you'd handle it. You took it masterfully. Something in your life that is simply irresistible.
I used to be able to say that would be a 6-ounce bottle of Coke that's been sitting in ice for about an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. But I've pretty much stopped drinking any kind of soda.
Okay.
Every once in a while when we're having pizza, I'll drink a half a glass of whatever's available.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Scale of 1 to 10. How good do you feel physically?
9 and 10, really.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of friends that have a lot more ailments and are younger than me.
Sure.
Yeah. So there you go. 9 and 10 most of the time. Sometimes the morning after cutting brush all day and hauling it. Probably just like you get up and then you feel like, oh wow, there's a muscle I didn't use yesterday.
Yeah, body letting you know.
It just takes longer for it to quit letting me know than it does you.
I don't know. I'm starting to feel it when the weather changes. I'm starting to feel it in my knees, and I used to laugh and make fun of folks over that, and now I'm like, that's a real thing. Don't laugh. That's real.
It's real. It really is. Yeah, it's kind of like playing basketball all your life, and you finally get into your 70s, and it's like, wow, that kind of hurts after I play basketball and run up and down that concrete driveway thing.
And you know, they're real injuries. My dad grew up playing a lot of basketball, and you know, high school, college, and I have vivid memories when I was a kid of running to leagues night with him at Barstow in Kansas City, and you know, other places where they'd run and gun, and you know, he'd get banged up, and ultimately he had his ankle fused because it was so, you know, deteriorated from years of that kind of activity.
I call that worn out.
Yeah.
You can't just throw it away either.
Right.
You know, some things you can discard, but your ankles or your knees.
Body's tired, man.
Yeah.
Body gets tired.
It isn't amazing that they can fix those things now.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. How do you define regret?
Regret's something you don't want to have, I don't think.
Yeah.
You try to, especially as you get into your late 20s, early 30s, of never letting a regret that's in your mind just pass. Just say, well, I'll deal with that later. You go to that person if you've injured somebody or hurt their feelings or whatever, and take up your part of it.
Yeah.
Tell them you're sorry. Tell them that you really care about them, and that was a moment in your life when you regret saying what you did.
Right. And I mean, you're kind of flowing into my next question. At your age, how can you get better every day? And what I heard in your answer right there is a man who realized that an action that he took so long ago could be atoned for through, contrite heart, repentance,
Yeah.
Going to a person and asking for forgiveness. Would you add anything to that list of how you could get better every day?
Yeah. I think you get better every day by getting up every day and realizing that the people in your life won't be there forever. They could be gone tomorrow.
Right.
And we've seen that in our community, not only just lately, but over the years I've been here, I've lost a lot of friends, close friends.
Yeah.
World War II vets, especially.
Right.
Ray
Right.
Cheek, Roy Cheek,
You're
Charlie Lebo.
Yeah, you're the there's a lot of people who've told me that I started this podcast too late because Roy Cheek was somebody who needed to be interviewed, and the people of the Lawson community who moved here or transplanted needed to know him. And that thing, it happens, right? Well, and again, that's the inspiration for this episode, is to try to motivate some generational knowledge transfer. That sounds, I don't know. It sounds cold to say it that way, but unless we know and we take the time to get the stories about how people grew up and lessons they've learned and whatnot, you're likely to be a lesser person than if you took the time. One of my favorite proverbs is 13:20, keep company with the wise and you'll become wise. If you make friends with stupid people, you'll be ruined. And, you're a wise guy. So
Sometimes I question that.
Right. Shrewd. I will say shrewd. So what I'm trying to do here is ask you 20 questions around life lessons. And by no means is this comprehensive. And at a half hour in, this is a multi-hour effort. And so we're going to sit here until as long as it takes, and then I'll just break up episodes for folks and, maybe split it out over 2 or whatever. But I want to encourage you to just let yourself go. Don't think that I'm out here not interested in what you're saying or the audience is worried about time or anything like that. We need to take this time and reflect on some of these things. And it may not be these questions all the time. It may not be the same questions for different people, but we need to practice this relational need of knowledge transfer. So let me start with the first question. Where did your story begin, and what was it like in your early years?
My early years were really good. I've reflected back to when I was 3, my first real memories of people around me and everything. But I was fortunate to grow up in a small town, which Lawson was a small town at one time, a really small town.
Right.
A lot of people would call Lawson a small town now.
Yeah.
But when you grow up in a town of 500 people and you probably have another 500 farmers that surround that community,
Right.
You get to know individuals very, very well, and they know you. And like we said, if you got in trouble at school, you're going to get in trouble at home.
Right.
Because the principal or whoever, teacher that corrected you would not only correct you,
Yeah. They
she
tell
would
your
call
mom or
your
dad
mom.
about it.
Yeah. And by the time you got home, you knew when you walked through the door, you better tread lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and we still have that some. I think, in this community. I know I have. I've experienced it personally. When my oldest son turned 16, he was running around being a kid and had the old truck. We had the old 6-cylinder, 4-speed on the floor truck that my kids still talk about it. They love that truck. And he was kind of speeding around town, and I just got a call at home from a person, and they said, "Hey, saw Clay go by," and he was flying pretty fast, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I turned around and we were in the room, and he looked at me, and he knew then
Oh yeah.
that call was not good, and it was fine. We discussed it, and I just told him, I said, "Hey, you hit somebody, and you hurt somebody,
Yeah.
and you'll never get over it."
Right.
And
Right.
I think he understood that.
Yeah. Well, and there's an update to that too, right? Some people say, "Oh, that's too close." That's the small town. I want my kids to be able to grow up, whatever. I call BS on that, because how many of us have Life 360 on our phones? How many of us are checking when somebody leaves school and gets home from school? And I think Life 360, if you pay for it, it'll tell you how fast they're going while they're going, right? So all we've done is supplement some of this feedback that we get from the neighbors with some device.
Let me ask you a question. Do you want to know every single thing that your kid does?
Oh, I don't. That's a wonderful question. And folks, you just found out why John and I get along so well, because this is the type of growth question that we need. I don't think I do. I mean, my goal as a parent is to try to work myself out of a job, right? I want to help put my kids in situations that will help them grow, love God, love others, and go out and do everything for that purpose. But they're gonna do some shady stuff in that time, and sometimes it's better if I don't know. But I will say this: the spirit of support I'm trying to give them is that when they screw up, that they can come to me and talk with me about something that they've done wrong, because as the person who loves them second most on this earth, I don't think I love them as much as their mom does. We want better for them than anyone else. And so if they're in trouble, we want to be able to talk to them about that stuff. So
who does your wife go to for discipline?
Who does my wife go to for discipline? What does that mean?
Well, to discipline your kids. When she's really frustrated with something they've done, who does she go to?
Oh, it's me.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna get that straight.
So I think dads have an obligation. I always felt like I did, to be the disciplined person in the house. I'd come in from work, 5 o'clock hour, which is the dread hour in a house of 4 kids that are growing up, going to school.
Yeah.
And I'd come in, the kids would be just everywhere, running, jumping, screaming, hollering. And all I had to say was, "Hey, stop that and get in the kitchen and help your mom."
Right.
And my wife, more than once, says, "How do you do that?" And I said, "Because I'm the dad. I'm the dad. I'm the guy that when I say something, especially about what you need help, they know that I better help."
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Dad don't play around.
Well,
who helped shape those values that you've got now in your early years when you were young?
my mom.
Really?
Yeah. You're talking about working yourself out of a job. Her expression was always, "I want to raise you to leave this house and grow a family."
Mm.
And it was usually after I'd been disciplined. You'd always hear those same words. I've heard them over and over. My kids have heard them over and over, because I realized sometime in the military, I lost 6 coworkers in Alaska when I was there, and how quickly life can be gone.
Yeah.
And, and, uh, 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 and, that was a changing point in my life because, we'd lost friends. I'd lost friends over the years, but these guys were just gone in a second.
Right.
And it changed my life. And I understood then what she was saying, that you have to be ready for what God gives you.
Mm.
And you have to understand that he's all powerful. And we're just here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that?
It's a breath. That's what I've heard. It's a breath.
It's a breath, yeah. From that time that I grew up to the time now, it just seems like yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you're the same way. It's like you grew up in Kansas City area?
Yeah. Grew up, born and raised in Independence.
Yeah.
And then spent a lot of time at the lake.
Yeah.
And then,
Time you're 15 and 16, you're thinking, okay, man, this is great. This is wonderful and stuff. But you can't imagine what's going to be happening in 10 years. Falling in love, having kids, and having kids is normal. That's what we're intended. That's the mandate that we were given. And here you are with kids, and now what do I do?
Absolutely. Well, and I confessed to Michael Stevenson that I kind of came to Lawson, not unwillingly, but I was very suspect of what life here would look like. And transitioning from Independence to Lawson was a really eye-opening and wonderful experience, ultimately.
A lot of good people here.
A lot of good people here.
A lot of good people have come and gone and then came back.
Sure.
Just look at the number of teachers that we have in the school, and there's a great number of them that lived here.
Yeah.
Went away to college, maybe taught somewhere for a year or two, and came back because they wanted to be here because of their experience when they were growing up.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And I put my wife squarely in that camp. We were looking at multiple places to live. I work in Kansas City and when you think about where her family was kind of here and my family was in Independence, we kind of settled on Liberty, and then we were there for 6-8 years and decided that as the kids were starting to grow, we wanted a slightly different perspective for them, for their, middle school, elementary school, middle school education. And so glad we made the shift, but it was never something we were able to really process when we're young and dumb. And I still feel like I'm young and dumb.
So do I.
Question 3. What cultural, family, or spiritual traditions influenced who you are today? It's a big question, I think.
It is. It's a huge question.
Yeah.
Once you get down to it.
Well, while you're thinking. Yeah. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Going to church.
Okay.
As a kid, it wasn't... I liked going to church because all of my friends were there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that is just hearing the word over and over, because it sinks in, whether you believe that or not. And you get in a really tough situation, and I've been in a few.
Certainly.
Especially in the working for the National Security Agency and things. You begin to rely on what you've heard there, of being able to stop for a moment and say, okay, Lord, what's going on here? Lead me. I need some outside help because this is beyond me. I don't understand where these people are going, especially in those situations that affect what you're thinking is national security, maybe, possibly, and it starts with the people that are doing the work. If they start doing shoddy work, all of a sudden things go backwards and things can escalate. And you've been there. You didn't aim to get in that argument, but all of a sudden you're in it and you're wondering how you got there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And again, because it's so big of a question and the answer is big, but we're really just scratching the surface with it. And it's another reminder of why these types of conversations are so important, because we could spend hours just talking about your life growing up in church. But I also know that you spent a lot of time hunting. You've spent a lot of time fishing. And, that nature bath. Is that what we've called it? That changes a man as well. So there's a lot of other experiences there. Would you care to just maybe glance over a few that come to mind?
I love to hunt. I've hunted the same property every opening season for probably 30 years, maybe 35 years. Same deer stand in the same tree. I'm going to have to move trees. My tree's dying. And last year when I climbed in it, it swayed a lot. So I thought, well, it might be a good idea to get out of this 16-foot off the ground stand that the tree might fall over and hurt me. So
Lord, I want to go, but just not right now.
Not out of my deer stand, but just crawling into that deer stand every year, especially the last probably 10. It's been a great experience to realize and sit down there and begin to hear the bob white, which there's not a lot of those around.
Right.
And I used to have them on my property, 2 and 3 coveys, and I don't anymore. I see maybe 2 or 3 at a time. Once in a while in the summer, hear them calling, and wake up to that and know that I'm privileged to be in that stand again at 76, and privileged to maybe shoot a deer or maybe just, I saw 9 bucks last year and never pulled the trigger.
Yeah, can you tell me about that? And I've had a storied relationship with hunting, and the idea of going and sitting in a deer stand and not pulling a trigger is foreign to me. So much so that if you put me in a deer stand and I don't have a gun and I see a deer, I'm happy. If you put me in a deer stand with a gun and I don't see a deer, I'm unhappy. If you put me in a deer stand without a gun and I don't see a deer, I'm not unhappy, right? There's some element to it that's like, with a gun in my hand, I have a job to do, right? I'm like going out there to whatever, exercise dominion, right? And if I don't come back, quote unquote, successful, I've failed. So, you talk about the last 9 years, 10 years, especially being important, and this ritual of getting in the deer stand and then not pulling the trigger. Walk me through that. Is that you could have pulled the trigger and you didn't? You just know how that story ends?
Nice, what people would call nice bucks. My son would say, "No, that's not true, Dad. You kill everything you see." That's not true. And he doesn't know it, but I just let him get at me on that. But I like to eat deer. That's one thing. That's a delicacy at our house. I usually kill a couple of deer a year at least, if not more. But just to shoot an animal, just to be shooting one, how much fun would that be?
Yeah, that's cruel.
I want to make sure that the kill is quick. They don't run off into the woods and I have to look for them for 4 days.
Sure.
And so I've had several deer last year. In fact, 9 of them. I'd never seen so many bucks, and they were all immature. They had horns, but they weren't grown enough. And the one that I really saw that was really big was like 800 yards away.
Yeah,
in the scope at dark 380. You're walking back to the truck, and it's getting dark enough you can't really see where you're walking, and you see this deer on the side of the hill at the sunset. He's got these horns that are way bigger than what they should be, and you're that far away, and you can see him in the scope, and you dial in at 15. And it's like,
it's the stuff that's on an outdoor magazine, man.
Yeah, and you don't get to shoot him, and you think, okay,
next year,
or somebody else will get the shot at him.
Right on.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's not about just shooting something.
Right.
Yeah. When you're starting to hunt, then it's about shooting something.
Right.
Every time.
How about early family memories, culturally and whatnot, that have kind of defined you?
My wife and I are both enigmas, strangely enough, in that her mom was 40 when she was born.
Okay.
My mom was 38. My brothers were 11 and 9 years older than me. So at age 6, when I started school, they were gone and making their own life. One in California, one in Missouri. So my family was my neighbors and friends, and my mom and dad, and there's a story behind that too. I've lost some of those close friends that were just down the road a half a quarter. You know, we rode our horses back and forth between houses. That's how we played, and we put up hay together, and we made garden together, and we canned food together, and things like that, because that's what we did. Work was not only a necessity, but it was also a fun time. It's when your neighbors.
It's community.
Yeah.
Pure community.
Yeah. And I got to do things that a lot of people don't, like make sauerkraut. The people down the road were of German descent, and they had a big kettle that they built outside about the size of this table, about that deep. And you'd cut up, they grew enough cabbage for all of Lawson. And we slice all that stuff up and throw it in there and build a big fire around it and cook it for days and can it. Ended up canning it. And it was, you know, I'm a kid, and it's like, wow, this stuff's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they were quite a bit older than my parents, but learned a lot from them.
Yeah. What key moment or turning point in your life changed you?
I think the moment that changed me was, again, losing a crew of 6 out of Alaska. Their plane just disappeared off the face.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. We were the Russians, if you want to call it that. That's not a classified thing. Every country spies on every country because they want to know what they're doing. And they were getting ready to launch a long-range ICBM. They drop them in the Bering Sea and pick up the pieces and study them just like we do. You know, they do exercises to see how their intelligence in that capacity is moving along.
Okay.
And they were getting ready to launch, and for some reason I couldn't, well, not me, my staff sergeant couldn't get the computers to work. So I just called in. It looks like they're going to launch. We can't send our crew up in an airplane. A plane wasn't there. It was being worked on. So a crew launched out of Alaska, normal daily thing that happens.
Routine.
Everybody, planes go in and out of Anchorage all the time. And I get this call about 4 hours later. You have to understand, we didn't have the cell phones that you have today that do everything that these do way more than our computers would do then. These were the old card computers where you type the cards up, stack them in there, it reads them. And so there's a lot of equipment in those planes. And when you lose power or an engine gives out, you can be in real trouble. So anyway, I got a call about 4 hours later. We were, my crew was on the ground from another radar quite a ways away from us, and said, we just lost contact with the plane. And the first thing in my head was, I wonder if that's the crew from Alaska, from out of Anchorage. And sure enough, it was. And we couldn't do anything about it. We were talking back and forth between the base in Anchorage, and I said something which was completely stupid. Are you going to send a search crew? And the guy said, we couldn't get there in time. Even if they parachuted out of the plane and made it to the water in the Bering Sea, you have about 15 minutes in the summer. Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking that could have been our crew.
15 minutes because of cold.
Cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody's on the same.
Yeah. The Bering Sea is cold, even in the summer.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's crystal blue. Cold. You can't imagine. If you think the cold water in Colorado in the spring's cold, try the Bering Sea.
Yeah.
I've jumped in it.
Yeah.
Off the island there.
Talk about a cold plunge.
Yeah. 85 degrees, 90 degrees outside, and you jump in the water, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is, can you imagine?
Yeah. 30s.
So anyway, yeah, that changed my life. And another time was I heard a person that was in ministry's feelings, musical. I was worship leader at a church, and I didn't realize it. I had no idea. What I did, I thought was perfectly right. But anyway, she told the pastor rather than coming to me. She told the pastor, who's a great friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was single. He could always smell the food cooking at our house 3 miles away. So he was there for supper. My kids loved him. And he just preached a sermon on forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of hem-hawed around a little bit. And I said, hey, man, what's on your mind? I can see by the way you're acting. You want to tell me something.
Got something we need to talk
He
about.
said, yeah, you've hurt the pianist's feelings last Sunday. And I said, really? I said, what did I do? And we discussed that. I won't go into those details. It wasn't anything traumatic or anything. But I said to him, I said, so what did I do wrong? He said, you didn't do anything wrong. You're perfectly right.
Right.
And what my mom would say sometimes, you can be perfectly right and still be wrong.
Yeah.
In what you did.
Yeah.
Even though it seemed perfectly normal to you, or maybe, your perception of this, that's childish to think that way.
I'd hope that would come up. That is something I've taken from our conversations.
Yeah.
You can be the way I remember you saying it was, you can be 100% right and still dead wrong.
Right. So the requirement from him, and this is the way he operated, he looked at me and he says, what I want you to do as your pastor and your best friend is to apologize to her for what you did. And he told me what this silly little thing was. And I thought it was silly at the time.
Yeah.
And so the next time we had worship practice, just like they do at our church, I sit down on the piano bench by her and I said, I've been told that I've hurt your feelings, and I want you to know that I love you. I appreciate what you did, and I had no intent to hurt you. Will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And she looked in my eyes with tears.
Yeah.
And said, I will forgive you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everything is well between us now.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me. I can still see that moment with my arm around her, telling her I was sorry, and realizing that what I'd been told by my mom several times.
Yeah.
Because kids can be foolish.
Yeah.
I would say things sometimes offhanded to other kids, and my mom would, in the car, would say, I know you were right in what you said, but you said it wrongly.
Right.
Things like that. So, yeah, that changed my life. I understood that maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but you hurt someone.
Yeah.
And a hurt is a hurt. So, especially if they're a very tender-hearted person.
Yep. Yeah.
Which my wife is, by the way.
Good preparation.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a comment I heard recently in it was management training. It talked about how there's kind of these layers of leadership definition. A good leader knows when to say he's sorry or when to acknowledge something, but more importantly, has the courage to do it. It's important that you need to apologize, but then actually apologizing is a whole nother deal. And that's real. It's a real example for those around you. And clearly it's a real pivotal moment in your life. Did apologizing become easier after that?
Yeah, it did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You learn to humble yourself.
What kind of work have you done, and what gave you a sense of purpose in it? Now, I know this is a huge question too, right? I mean, you talked about growing up on the farm. We've talked about the NSA. We've talked about your work with the post office. I know you've done, work around here with people in the community. So let's focus maybe more on the purpose that you get out of the work, but also define it.
I love work that's about people, helping people. I think that's why I loved my job here. We've talked about, I've had several opportunities to leave this community. And every time I would do that, it was like, this is where I belong.
Mm.
Yeah. My wife and I would sit down and talk about a job at whatever Lee Summit, Richmond, over the years had come open, and it was more money, but you start talking about friends and family and time away from the family.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, if you took a job in Lee Summit, it means that, and it was in my last 5 years
Yeah.
here.
That's a cost.
Yeah, it's a cost. I can stay and drive every day, but I just looked at the community and looked at the people that I love, the church family that we have,
Yeah.
the relationship that you and I have on every Friday morning until just late,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and say, hey, what's more important, another dollar or friendship?
Yeah.
People you love and you can counsel with. You can go say, hey, this has come up. I don't really know the answer. Can you give me some help?
Yeah.
You know, and it's been great. It's just been great. It's
So
why we're here.
So it's clearly not about the money. It's more about relationship and the sacrifices around those you're in relationship with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as if you're driving back and forth an hour and 20 each way to Lee Summit, you're not going to have time with your family. Whereas working and living 10 minutes from the office is a whole nother ball of wax in it.
Yeah. And I had probably more people here now. There's surrounding Lawson. There's more people surrounding Lawson than there is in Lawson.
Yeah.
About 8,000 customers. When you start counting kids and grandmas and grandpas and all those people, you build a relationship with them. You see them every day or at least once a week, and they trust you. They come in and say, hey, I need to mail this. I said, well, okay, so tell me what you need, and then I'll fit what we have to that.
Right.
You know, and if the cost isn't prohibitive and it's what you want, that's what we'll do.
Make it happen.
Yeah. And then sometimes you have to apologize when it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say, I'm sorry. I thought this would be the best way.
Right. What's something difficult that you went through that taught you a lasting lesson? And you've talked about the loss of those 6 in the plane crash. Do you have anything either more recently or something closer to home that our listeners could identify with?
Over the years for me, I think something that's really caught my attention is how short life is for some people. Yeah, I'm 76. We just buried a young man that was very close to me. I knew his mom and his dad, and the loss of a young life is very hard to understand.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to trust that God knows better than you do.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it's out of order.
Yes, that's a good statement. Yeah. Burying a child, I can't imagine. I have a good friend that I played basketball with in high school for 3 years together. We were close. We hunted together. We fished together. In fact, I taught him how to hunt. His dad didn't hunt at all, and he wanted to learn to hunt, so I taught him how to hunt. He was a year younger than me, maybe 2. I think 2 years younger than me. And his oldest son, who was a doctor of chiropractic, killed himself. And they had no idea why. And we haven't gotten together since then, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of deep theological questions. He's a Christian, and that was the Lord. And he, from our few conversations we've had, it's, you know, if it hadn't been for having a relationship with Jesus Christ, I don't think I could have got through this.
Yeah.
It's just having no answers, knowing that he knows better than I do. So there you go. Those kind of things move you to love people more because you never know what's going on. Sometimes.
Right. Help me understand what moving to love people more means to you. You know, again, it's one thing to say, I need to, whatever, fill in the blank as a result of something significant that happens. And then it's something altogether different to actually do something different.
Yeah.
That's peculiar or that's harder or, you know, challenging in a way that, you know, you say, I'm going to start down this road and then You get a few days in, and you're like, it loses steam. But what you've talked through is pivotal. So how do you really love people after a decision like that?
I think it's accepting them just like Jesus would accept them.
Mm.
He had an advantage, of course,
Sure,
because he could see their heart, but we can't, you know. So saying harsh things about people offhandedly, and I've done that in private, not to them, and then realize later, after I get to know them a little better, that there's some scars in their life that are deep.
Yeah.
And they haven't resolved. And if they become a really good friend like you and I have, we talk about those scars and how they affected us and how we got past them because of our love and spiritual connection to the Lord. Yeah. So people that say offhanded things about someone that I know, or maybe there's just an acquaintance, I always kind of just let that go.
Yeah.
Because I don't need to put that in my mind, because it causes a bias for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then I get to really know that person. And it's like, what's that dude talking about?
Yeah.
This guy's a great guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
He lost his father when he was 6 and had to go to work, at the age of 12 to support his mom and his brother and his sister. And it was a hard life. And here he is now. And he has some scars.
Yeah. As a man in my mid-40s, I'm just now starting to come into that consideration.
You start growing up at about 45.
Yeah. And, there's these rites of passage that lead to it, right? You turn 16 and you start driving, and there's a layer of responsibility. And then you turn 21 and 25, and, you start having kids, and the dynamics around all of these things just change. But I started realizing I was having some issues with anger. And so read a few books, and one particular that I read was called Unoffendable. And you literally just stop being offended. And when you stop being offended, you can engage people in a completely different way, right? You take that emotion off of the table, then you have to find something else that's productive to do with it. And I'm moving in the direction you just laid out, right? Well, if I can't be mad, then I can try to understand. I can try to communicate and connect with that person. And it's really been transformational. So to see you come to fruition like you have, and how you're talking about it's inspiring.
Well, I was just thinking of a time in my life when I met a man. His name was Andy Andrews, and he gave us a bunch of books. I didn't know he was an author, and we went over to his house and ate and stuff. And he's just a man, and he gave us a bunch of books, and I read one, and I still have it. I read it every once in a while. It's called The 7 Things You Need to Know to Live.
Okay.
That's as close to the title as I can get. And one of the things he said in there is never be offended.
Really?
By anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're never offended, then you never get angry.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean you don't have righteous anger about something that was done to a friend or a family member or whatever.
Right. And
it was done unjustly. That's not what it means. But to get offended about somebody calling you a name, it's
right. I got better things to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read that. I was reading that book, and I came across it, and I thought, man, I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to try not to be offended. And it takes time.
It takes discipline.
It takes discipline and time.
Yeah.
And we were on a mission trip, and one of the people that we worked with, and I won't get into names because you guys probably would know them anyway, but man, they raked myself and the guy who is the leader of the ministry over the coals.
Right over the coals.
Up and down, up and down, up and down for like 20 minutes. And she called us everything you could think of. Americans, all kinds of things.
Sure.
And I never said anything the whole time. Neither did my partner, which I was surprised because he can get ticked off pretty quick, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And we walked out of the building after it was over, and we were walking across the street back to the place that we were staying. And he looked over at me and says, "Well, what'd you think of that meeting?" And I said, "Don't be offended. Don't be offended. Don't be offended. Don't be offended."
Just you repeat it like a mantra.
I was just, that was going through my head for hours after that. And how happy now that I didn't, because you could have said a lot of things.
You can. And you think through the things that people do when they get offended, right? The anger boils over.
Mm-hmm.
And a fool gives full vent to his wrath, right? Like just that's a foolish thing to do, to act like that. And the best people in our culture who have every reason to respond in anger don't do their job well if they do it while they're mad. So think about the best police officers that you know, right? Think about the best teachers that you know, best administrators that you know, right? In this particular area. The second they give full vent to their wrath is the second that they wind up on the news or say something that hurts a kid's feelings or gets them in trouble, hot water with the community. It's not the way to do it.
Right. So, you're correct.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
How has love, romantic or otherwise, impacted your journey? What have you learned about long-term commitment?
Well, I've been married for 54 years.
Yes, you have.
And my wife is awesome, just awesome.
Becky?
Yeah. A lot of people know her. I've said before, I wouldn't have any friends if it wasn't for my wife. She just...
Isn't that true? I mean, not true. I mean, you'd have one friend, but what they do to your life, I mean, the fullness that they bring to it, the community, I don't know. There's a lot here. It's your question. You take it.
Well, I'm just, if you know, and I know a lot of people that are probably listening in this podcast know her, we don't meet strangers ever. I mean, we've been in traumatic situations in hospitals where people are dying, and on our way out, there'll be two people sitting in the waiting room. And my wife will ask, "How's your day going?" And we'll spend an hour there talking to them. And that specific instance was those two people knew my son.
Right.
And we would have never known it if we walked by him. But she did not walk by him. She saw him sitting there earlier. When we came back by, they were still there. And for her, that means something's going on.
Got to say something.
Got to say something. And she just asked, how you guys doing? Well, husband's in a long operation. And I thought, oh, here we go.
Here we go. An hour
later, we ended up praying with his people for her husband, who'd been in a 6-hour surgery. And the lady that was the author that was with her friend ended up praying over us because we were getting ready to go to Honduras for 10 days. And she prayed over the whole thing.
Wow.
It was amazing. And I walked out of there again awed by the wife that God's given me.
Yeah.
And I grew up with her. We went to school together, never dated, never even considered going out with her till I came home at Christmas one time from college. And my best friend that lost his son said, "Yeah, you ought to dance with her. She's really a nice person." And from that dance, we've been together for probably 57 years.
57 years.
Of knowing and being married.
And the high level certificates that go with that.
Oh, my.
Kids. How many kids?
4.
You got 4 kids.
Clay, Chris, Amanda, and Tyler.
Yep. Multiple houses, many different living situations.
Yeah.
Hard times, tough times, sickness, health, better, worse.
Right.
Richer, poorer.
Yeah, my first postmaster job or management job, if you want to call it that, I went to in 1978, I believe, and it was a year before my family could move to that area. We just couldn't get our house sold.
Yeah.
So I'd drive down, spend the week there, and come back. And that was a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's raising 2 little boys, and yeah, that was a tough time for both of us.
Sure.
But we look back on it and we realized how we grew through that and how many friends we made in that community once we got there.
Certainly. 57 years together doesn't happen by accident, right?
Correct.
So what has this length of this commitment taught you? You know, I mean, I know it's not always easy or whatnot. It's so easy to say, but walk me through the steadfastness required to have a relationship for 57 years.
We've had our ups and downs. Again, it's learning how to communicate, and we didn't do it well when we were first married. Some friends actually in this community where I had my first job as a postmaster recommended Family Life Today, Weekend to Remember. And so we went and we learned more about each other in a weekend than we had learned up to that time.
Wow.
Yeah. I would recommend that to anybody. If you want to go somewhere to strengthen your marriage, Family Life Today has a Weekend to Remember. It's awesome. Awesome speakers, and they're very truthful and direct. Get on the front row so you can see their eyes. And when they start talking about their ups and downs through lives, and we've been to many of them. Some of those speakers have been divorced from each other and realized that they had offended God and told each other that and worked through their difficulties and got back together and raised a family.
Wow.
Some of them have lost spouses and remarried and tried to learn how to put two families, a blended family together.
Right.
And from that, we just took little bits and nuggets from that.
Yeah.
And learned how to communicate better. And we haven't always done it right.
Right.
We've had our times, and it's like, okay, we've got to move forward here, even though we're both upset, and work on this, because who else would I love but you?
Right.
You know, I'm 40 years old. Am I going to go out and find a new wife? Believe me, you don't want to start over. It's not worth it. But we've had a great relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And you've inspired me and Carissa as well with respect to your all's relationship. But I'm now thinking back about some of the other questions you've already answered, right? How, if you're not going to be offended, sometimes the person who's living right under your roof can offend you the most. And that's tough to overcome too, you know? So there's a lot of work that has to be done there.
Yeah. My wife still says to me occasionally, I don't want you to fix this. I just want to talk to you.
Just want to listen.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do because men tend to want to fix things.
Yeah.
It's like the tire's flat. Well, let's get it off and let's get it,
yeah,
fixed or whatever that takes, let's get the thing back on the road.
Yep.
And,
have you ever seen the It's Not About the Nail video?
No, I have not.
Okay. The listeners, pause this show right now and go watch It's Not About the Nail. Just type that into your video search engine. It's Not About the Nail. And it's 3 minutes of glory when it comes to just listening instead of trying to fix. And I share it with everyone.
I will do that when I get home.
You bet. How has your faith or belief system evolved through different seasons of life? I mean, it's clear to me that you're a growing Christian, but I've observed faith in many different perspectives. And I think it's one thing to say I have it, and another thing to actually live by it. And the times that I have seen faith lived have been nothing short of miraculous for me. So I'm asking that question as a softball thrown your way, right? But can you go really deep with it? How has faith evolved through different seasons of your life?
I think it's watching people pass, people that you love and care about, and knowing it's going to happen no matter what. My mom was a great example of a true person who lived her faith. I've seen her not be offended by people who were real offensive. Being a 20-year-old and hearing somebody from the church say things that never should have been said to my mom, and her just sitting there and smiling and said,
I will not be offended. I will not be offended.
Well, I don't think that's what she was saying, but she truly had a faith that even my wife will tell you that was amazing. She loved people for who they were, and if they wanted to be nasty, that's fine, but she just wasn't going to go there.
Right.
And she was going to love them. I've seen her take people into her home and help them, raise them, talk to them. And watching that example and having it live before me, I saw her by my grandmother, my Ella Recta was her name, dying of cancer. Of course, that was back when they didn't even know how to treat cancer.
Sure.
And watched how she loved her mom and loved my grandma and was by her side when she died. And I was standing in the doorway when she passed. Mm-hmm. And watching my wife do that now. Yeah. My mom didn't have any girls, so my wife was her daughter.
Right.
And she just loved my wife to pieces.
Mm.
She would tell me quite often, she said, "Oh, that's my favorite girl in the world." You know, it was fun to watch that. So just watching people pass, be gone, and have that empty in your life.
Right.
And then having God come along and fill it with people like you in my life.
Thank you.
Who would ever thought 20 years ago that I'd be sitting with a 40-year-old that was where I was when I was 40, and having 4 kids.
Infant, child.
Yeah. Well, and then having you say things to me, about life and ask questions, and I can answer them as best as I could, but what worked for me maybe not works for you because your kids are all different. Marianne is different than Pal, and Pal's different than Lola, and Lola's different than Christopher.
Right, but I'll challenge you a bit on that, because something I've also learned from you is that when you make decisions based on principles versus rules, that transfers and that correlates to any age, any season, any environment, right? If we say you have to be home at 11 is a rule, right? The principle is in our home, we're going to be in bed at a reasonable hour, and unless there's something comes up that justifies being outside of that principle, right?
Yeah.
So no, so to your point, right? You've helped me see principles in parenting and life and whatnot, and at any age, those work.
Yeah, rules will keep you alive. Principles will let you grow.
They'll flourish.
Yeah, you'll flourish with principles of respect.
Yeah.
You can tell your kids you'll always respect people no matter what.
Yep.
That's a rule.
Yep.
Okay. But the principle as they grow teaches them to respect people they don't even care for or like. And let's face it, there's some people that we disconnect with.
Yep.
And we're friends with, and we can develop a relationship like we have. But there's others that, they're good people. They have a family, they have a life, they have a story. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a story in their life. As you've well found out on your podcast, we were just talking about it before we started.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, to find out, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to hear their stories and how it affected them, and how, if it affected them negatively, they've grown past it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And usually the people that are here in your podcast, and I've listened to all of them, but the very last one I haven't gotten to yet.
Thank you.
It's just great to hear their story, about how they grew up, or the negative things that helped their life.
Yeah.
And understand that story helps me,
Yeah.
because I can get in that situation maybe, and I think, oh, well, this is what that person did. I'm going to try that,
Yeah.
and do,
Very good. What's something that you once believed strongly that you later changed your mind about?
that rules were the end of all.
Really?
Yeah. That,
Where did you get the rules-oriented perspective, and then
I
kind of
think
what changed it?
I think I kind of had them in school. You get to school at 8:00 in the morning.
Sure.
Going to leave at 3. You got to be out of there, down to work at the grocery store, whatever I was doing at the time. You had to be on time. You had to do this. You had to do that. And I think that comes from, and I'm sorry to say this, probably, is church.
Okay.
There's
There's a difference between faith and religion, you mean?
there is.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's the same way that there's a difference between rules and principles.
Right.
They're all the same thing. And yeah, there's certain things. We don't drive 100 miles an hour down D highway going through town.
Yeah.
And the rule is there, if you get caught, you're going to pay. Right?
Yeah. That's
right.
the rule.
Right. But the principle is, hey, we don't want to hurt anybody.
Right. Including ourselves.
Right. Or other people.
Right.
And once we kind of get past those, and the military didn't help me any, you don't walk under a certain part of the aircraft because you can cut your head wide open.
Absolutely. In anything that involves, I think ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, right?
Correct.
Anything that involves missiles needs to be handled with kid gloves.
Yeah.
And rules.
And rules. Yeah. Especially you put a nuclear warhead on top of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot about the world in general, not only the United States, but Russia, China. Because I've found out that people in general I've been in places all over the world, I've been in the Middle East, mission trips. Most families like ours that aren't in leadership in the country, they just want to raise their family.
Yeah.
I have kids. I love them.
I want what's best for them.
I just want peace.
Yeah.
And I don't care about getting another plot of ground or making another dollar or whatever. And I'm not trying to belittle our leadership. I'm trying to say that most people have a heart to do what's right and to see their kids flourish.
Yeah.
And to do better than they did.
Yeah, I think you're making that point clear. I mean, I see you measuring your words and being very careful here, but I think we understand.
Yeah, everybody has their political views.
Right.
What's right, what's wrong. But what do you really want at your heart? You want peace.
Yeah.
You want to be able to flourish at your job and raise your family and have grandkids.
Right.
I've got 15 that are ours. Well, 16 now. I have a great grandchild and a great grandchild. And only seen her once. We need to get down and see her again. It's not like we have deep conversations yet, but just seeing pictures of her and holding her is totally different.
Yeah.
And everybody's that way. Everybody that has kids just wants their kids to do good.
Right.
And once you had Becky Harold on here,
I did.
Great example. Becky and I have different views on life. That's great. I can live with that. But what does she want for her child? She wants her kids to flourish.
Same thing you want for yours.
Yeah,
Yep.
and even more than that, she wants your kids that she's teaching to know history,
Yep.
to know not to make the mistakes of some of the people there, or to do what some of the people did in history,
Right.
because it was right and it was just,
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. I don't know if that answers your question or not, because that was a pretty broad,
Yeah,
deep
they're
question.
all that way, and they're done like this intentionally. I was trying to go back and forth between storytelling in the sense of, you paint the mental picture, grandpa sitting in front of his family around the fire, and he tells you a story back in my day, and you just go through one story, right? And I'm kind of looking at it like the difference between rules and principles.
Mhm.
You can tell a story, but there's a moral for the story. And so I'm trying to focus on the morals as we get into this. And I actually think this is a good time to pump the brakes on our part 1. And so we'll leave it there and send everybody packing and come back in 1 week and talk about our next 10 questions. So this has been the Son of the Law podcast. We'll see you next week for part 2.